Today I want to talk to you about how frequently you should release a record. Hi, Ryan Sullivan here for Refine Audio, and one of the questions my clients ask me frequently is how many records they should be releasing and how often. There's a lot of debate around whether to release a full album versus an EP versus singles. If you don't know what the difference between those is, a full album or an LP is a long play record, which is a whole bunch of songs, something like 10 plus songs, and that is a great format in which to bundle an entire body of work. An EP is an extended play, which is a few songs, generally up to 3 or 4. Some people call up to 6 songs an EP. There's no hard fast rules there. And then a single is one single song, and that could just be an original version of a song, or it could be accompanied by some remixes. So essentially that would mean it's still 2 or 3 songs, up to 4 songs or whatever, could still be a single if it's one song and a few remixes of that same song. And just to be clear, the point of remixes is to take your song to a different audience or a wider audience. So if you make an indie psychedelic rock song and you also want to reach a drum and bass audience, you would get a drum and bass artist to make a drum and bass remix to reach their audience and beyond. That's just one silly example, but you get the point. So when it comes to how many releases you should put out a year, it depends on what it is that you plan to do. If you are, like I said, there's a lot of argument around whether to release a full album versus an EP versus a single, and there are pros and cons in either direction, and it all comes down to investment essentially. So let's just talk about sheer quantity, how regularly you should be releasing something. In today's market, where streaming it's kind of the most popular way for people to be consuming music today, albums don't necessarily make sense. They can make sense. I've just released an album myself, and they can make sense if you have a strategy in place to market and promote that album and get longevity out of it. So if you have music videos and a variety of methods of getting that album in front of people for an extended period of time, maybe 3 months, 6 months, a year, then it is valuable to release an entire album. If you have the ability to sell physical copies, I just put out or sold out of CD copies of my album, and I've now repressed in order to make that one angle or one method of accessing my album. Once that campaign was complete, I then moved over to a digital campaign, pushed the whole album, and I also have the ability to push each individual single through different marketing methods and PR strategies and marketing strategies and so on. So the release strategy has a lot to do with how often you should be releasing your music. So when it comes to releasing more frequently, there's nothing wrong with that. You would want to release, I would say at most once a month. At least once every 2 months if you're working with singles, and again that gives you the ability to kind of or give each record, each single or each EP some longevity, right? So if you only have the assets to promote a single for 4 weeks, then after 4 weeks you would want another record out to have more news to share with your fans, right? And more content to share with your fans. An EP that maybe consists of 4 to 6 songs, you can create more assets around more songs, enabling you to promote that EP for a longer period of time. So perhaps an EP of 4 to 6 songs could be promoted for 3 to 6 months easily, and therefore you wouldn't need to release quite as often. If you are a dance music or an electronic music artist, then it is easier to make things stretch or make releases stretch over a longer period of time, because you are able to, say for example, release an original single this month, and in a month's time release a music video, in another month's time release a house remix or a deep house remix. Another month or even 2 months down the line, release a different kind of remix. Could be a different genre or a different artist that you really appreciate that you want to bring into your record. But those things are like assets behind each individual song and each individual release, allowing you to get more traction for a longer period of time, lengthening the shelf life of the record essentially. And that's what that comes down to. So if you are, again, in electronic music, if you're a remixer, there would be nothing wrong with, let's say you planned on having an album's worth of music put out in a year. That would be 12, or typically like 12 singles throughout the year. That could be a release every single month of a single. You could then commission remixes for certain singles or all singles to get more traction out of them, but you wouldn't want too much overlapping where you're marketing too many songs at one time, or a remix and an original that overlap month to month. That can get complicated and confusing for your fan base and your audience. So that's not necessarily the best idea. It can be done, it's just got to be thought about and strategized to make sure that the plan makes sense, so that when you are reaching your audience, they're not confused and they are absolutely loving each project that you put out and make available to them. For a band, it's quite similar. They don't, except bands, it's not that typical for a band to have remixes done of their songs, but it is totally possible. Look at hip hop, for example, although the hip hop's not generally with bands, but even hip hop artists have a different version of a remix, you know, where lyrics, new verses are put over the same beat and with the same hook, but just changing up the verses can basically be a remix. And there's nothing wrong with a certain amount of overlap. So with bands, again, if you have a single each and every month, then that's a great amount of content to be putting in front of your audience on a regular basis. And if it's hard for you to create that much music, to maybe write or afford to professionally produce or mix and master that amount of content, then there's nothing wrong with slowing down. You can totally halve that amount and aim for 6 songs a year and draw out your marketing strategy to ensure that one song is stretched over a 2-month period. So you can make your gigs for those 2 months be all about that one song that you've just released, even though you're performing other songs obviously, but the focus and the highlight within the press releases that go out for your touring schedule can highlight the current song that you're marketing. And when those 2 months draw to an end, you can then incorporate the next single that drops into that whole process. I'll create another video with some other frequently asked questions that I get from my clients, my friends within the music industry and so on. There's a lot of things, there's a lot of angles to cover, so I can't squeeze them all into one video. It would be extremely long and I don't want to bore you with that much information in one sitting. So I'll definitely be creating a couple more videos for you, and I hope you enjoy it. If you have enjoyed this, I'm not going to ask you to like and follow. You do whatever it is you want to do, and I hope this is beneficial to you. That's what this is really about. I'm Ryan Sullivan for Refine Audio, and I hope that you kick ass with your music releases. Cheers.